Russians are absolutely the best in the art of changing shoes. Best in the world. I'm going to give you a couple examples. Not just a couple, but pretty much most Russians are really good at that. Example number one. A politician in the USSR, a communist, hardcore communist, made his career, self-made man, made his career, started at the very bottom and rose to the very top. He rose to the what is considered modern day governor of a province of the USSR. And boy, he was good. He was so full of communist ideals, Vladimir Lenin's ideals. I heard his speeches. My gosh. He was the beacon of communist ideology. The way man spoke was unfreaking believable. He was leading the people. He had tons of followers. Okay, he was talking highly of the communist state, of the USSR, of communism, of the principles. Okay, he was bashing the United States of America. He was bashing capitalism. He was bashing the Western world. He was calling the Western world the enemies and so forth. Anyway, at his middle age years, he was called up, moved up to Moscow, and he became one of the top dogs of the Communist Party of the USSR. And that's a big deal, my friends, Was a big deal. Boy, he was furious. He was just spreading communist ideas. Now, all of a sudden, overnight, everything changed. And boy, that person changed as well. He changed his color completely. From black to white, from white to black, I don't know, from red to stars and stripes, whatever. He became, all of a sudden, a capitalist. He became humanist. He became Democrat, a Democrat. He led the country, the new country, and he changed his ideals just like that, and he started spreading new ideas, new ideals. He traveled to the United States, and he was given a chance to speak in front of the Senate, and his speech is available to everyone. And oh my gosh, he was calling communism plague, a virus. Plague was cured, the virus was squished, and the communism is a disease that's not going to happen in Russia for the next 1,000 years. He was saying exactly the opposite of what he had been saying as the communist boss. US senators applauded him. Yes, that's quite an example. The second example is also very interesting. A fantastic artist. I'm saying without any sarcasm, the works of the artist I enjoy very much. I've seen quite a few works of his. Created fantastic, well, I'm not going to tell you what, just let's call it the works. And he was very famous. He shot to fame at the very early age of his teen years. And he just stayed in the limelight of the USSR. And of course, he was supporting the Soviet system. But you couldn't become successful, anyone, professional, artist, politician, not supporting the Soviet system, not becoming a communist. Well, of course, he became the member of a communist party, and, he was making speeches about how the USSR is so much more progressive and better than the capitalism and communism. Well, you know the drill. Then all of a sudden, everything changes. And this guy, who had been telling that he comes from the working class family and was very proud of that, and he was bashing nobility and stuff like that, all of a sudden, he says, well, I come from a noble ancestors. I'm a nobility, okay? and he becomes always serious and all important. Okay, and he starts making money, and all of a sudden he's not communist anymore, but a capitalist. And all of a sudden he starts working with the Americans who he had been bashing just months, years before. All of a sudden he starts working with them, and all of a sudden he wins an American world famous award for his work, which very well deserved, but nevertheless, whew, okay, well, I'm good for the guy. Perhaps he didn't just change his color, but he changed his ideals. That happens too. And there's nothing wrong with that. But then 30 years passes, and the same very guy is changing color again. And Americans have become enemies for him. And of course, he's pro-Russia, spread Russian world, Russian values. You know what I mean. And then just two examples. But really, in 1991, in reality, the entire country of the USSR, around 300 million people, they changed shoes because they were forced to. Howdy, everyone. My name is Konstantin. Welcome to Inside Russia. Giving you the updates, my takes, my views on what is happening in Russia. Telling you of the usual Russia. The usual Russia explained by the unusual Russian. Thank you for coming and giving me a chance. It's going to be a very complicated stream, very difficult to deliver in a simple words, but I'll try. Anyway, without further ado, let's jump right into it. So, entire country changed shoes. I remember very well, I was 14 years old, 15 I think. Was it 15? 15. And I remember that day quite well. 3 days really, but one day that changed everything. USSR one day, Russia the next day. Communism one day, capitalism another day. Suppression one day, freedom the very next day. Oh, it was crazy. It was liberating. It was the best time. Okay. So a lot of people were changing. They changed overnight basically because they found themselves waking up in a new life and they had to adjust somehow. Now, some people, it's okay to change your opinion. You see, it's okay when you open your eyes, when you finally understand what really is going on, when you wake up and all of a sudden you see things differently. It's perfectly okay to change your opinion. I, myself, would never take a stone and a rock and throw into a person for doing that. But there's one prerequisite for that. That change must be honest. You must be true to yourself. The change must come from the inside. You must really believe in what you say. When you change, you say things, you must believe in them. Then it's perfectly normal because, you know what? Our life is one long journey and things change throughout life. We get knowledge, we get new experiences, and they influence our opinions. Perfectly normal again. But and some people in Russia back in 91, they believed in the new ideals. Their eyes got open, so to speak. But then there were some people that didn't really change on the inside. But I don't really say that they changed. I say they changed their color. They painted themselves over with a new color. What used to be considered black, communism in 91, well, at first it used to be considered white. And if you were against communism, you were considered black, okay? So everyone was painting themselves white. And they were making points that, oh, we believe in that, we're so sincere, we're so truthful. And then they wake up in August on August morning in 91, and then they change. They first thing they do, they paint themselves over in white or in black or whatever, the different opposite color, and they say, well, you know what? We never believed in communism. We never believed. Oh my gosh, those terrible beasts, the commies. They hate them. That was them just a few days before. So people like that, I call them changing shoes. And there are artists, okay? A lot of people didn't really change on the inside. They just changed their colors. They changed their shoes. Well, they had to adopt. They had to live somehow. And the biggest problem for Russia is that most people who were leading the country before, they were somehow started, like, they just changed their color, and they were kept in place, in the same leading place. The communist bosses became capitalist bosses. It's just they changed their names. They used to be communists, they become capitalists. That's how they used to call them. They changed shoes in one day. They changed their color. Okay, that's really a tragedy for Russia. And a lot of people did also. The bosses mostly, they started following the money trail. Because back in the USSR, the communist bosses they had lots of power, but they could not accumulate money. They had everything given to them by the state, cars, large estates and so forth. But once they were stripped of their positions, everything was taken away, and they had no way to accumulate money. But then in the new Russia, they had the ways to accumulate money, because obviously it's capitalism. So they followed the money trail. They got the resources, they got the power, they kept on power, and they started making money. So the entire country changed their shoes. Okay. There was a mistake made by the Russian society. Lustration must have been made, must have been executed. It was never executed. Russia was never given the chance to get fresh new people to lead the country, young people. Like I said, the old communist bosses, they kept on ruling Russia. And the new caste of people was born, the rich Russians, the oligarchs. Usually it's the Russians who were active and they had access to resources. Usually they were connected to the Communist Party somehow. A good example of that is Mikhail Khodorkovsky. Okay, he's very famous oppositioner in Russia right now, but if you ask him where he was coming from, he was a member of Komsomol, and this is how he started making his money. I know his story quite well because one of my close friends knew him way back in the 1990 when he was relatively unknown, and he was one of the young communist Komsomol bosses here, there in Moscow. I'm in Tashkent now. So the oligarchs, the rich Russians, were born and they were connected to the people in power who used to be former communists. It turns out that you could take boys out of the USSR, but you couldn't take the USSR out of the boys. Well, what's done is done. Perhaps people changed. Let's give them the benefit of the doubt. It's all water under the bridge. That happened in the past. Look at Russians. Look how they, started living after 1991. The 30 years were actually very different from the USSR. 30 years were, I would say, pretty well-to-do in terms of money and fairly okay in terms of freedom. Russia as a country was good. Well, at first it was good. It was accepted by the international community. It was considered good. Friend. Then it was considered okay. Its status downgraded. but still a member of international community, still okay, still not an outlaw, okay? 30 years until 2021. A lot of regular people moved on. They started doing business. They forgot about their Soviet past. They started doing business. They started traveling around the world freely. They had some level of personal freedoms and so forth. So all that in the USSR was distant past, all gone, all in the past. Well, the leaders seemed to change as well. Well, Boris Yeltsin was gone, but this new guy, Vladimir Putin, came. Okay, he's used to work for the KGB, and they say that there are never former KGB agents, okay? But hey, look, he was good. He seemed really decent. He seemed young. He seemed open to the West. He seemed, gearing towards democracy. Things he did were actually not too bad. Remember how he walked onto a red square where Paul McCartney was giving the concert? And there were like 3 security guards with him. That's it. He was accessible. He was walking around. People were touching him, shaking his hands, taking pictures. And then he was asking people, please, I'm not the star of the show. Paul McCartney is. And this was euphoria. It was like finally Russia got the leader who's decent, who's right, who's righteous, Then Vladimir Putin actually quit. Well, he didn't quit. His second term ended, and he didn't hang on to power. He didn't break any rules. He just left power, and the new president was elected, Dmitry Medvedev. Boy, that guy was awesome. He was so accessible by real people. He used to ski all the time at Sochi, and people would ski right up to him. He would sign, give autographs, and people would take selfies. They would ask him to do something, just like on a, regular skiers. He would fly to the United States and he would tour companies in Silicon Valley. He would meet Steve Jobs, and Steve Jobs gave him a present, a brand new iPhone in the development. And, they were just making friends. And I was looking at it. Millions of Russians around me were looking at it saying, wow, this is incredible. This is happening. Friends, this is happening. We are in. We are accepted. We're good. We are, that's what it's all about. We're doing great with money. We have great present. Look, this can't go wrong. Steve Jobs is a friend with this guy. Then Western bands, famous bands, would come to Moscow to tour, and Dmitry Medvedev was a big fan of rock bands, old rock, and he would just invite them over to his house, and then they would have parties and they would televise it. Oh, that was fantastic. Dmitry Medvedev did a lot of good things for Russian business. You can tighten the screws or you can untighten the screws. So he started untightening the screws. He was pretty liberal, and I was getting my hopes high about that guy. Now, it's in the past. I'm talking about those different people, okay? The people that are now, they're absolutely different from those who were in the past, okay? They look the same, they have the same names, but they're just different. Their actions are 100% different. So, look at the Russia's ideals, Russia's goals with those guys, with Putin, younger Putin and younger Medvedev. Vladimir Putin was an avid fighter for human rights and democracy and freedoms, and he said so many times that Russia's goal number 1 is to have equality for everyone. No one is above the law. Corruption must be eradicated. Russia needs to be a part of NATO. Yes, he did want to become a part of NATO. Russia wants to be a part of the West, an international community member, a good partner, a good friend. 9/11 happened. He was the first leader of a country calling George W. Bush, offering help. And Russia opened airspace for U.S. warplanes. They were flying to Iraq. It was the first country to respond and help. things were good. Russia was accepted as a member of international community in good standings. Russia was accepted as a member of World Trade Organization. Russians could travel freely to many countries without visas, and foreigners could travel to Russia without visas. Russia was moving into the right direction. And then everything changed. Turns out that once you master this art of changing shoes and you use it once, you never forget or forfeit that skill. It can be forgotten. It can be way back in the past. It can be out of your memory, but it's still inside of you. It's still inside of you. It does not disappear. Once you have it for life. The country started changing shoes. They were goals of certain people. The thing is, before 2012, the goals of the leaders of the country, they somehow they synchronized with the goals of people. Okay, but after 2012, things changed, and some people, they started changing shoes personally, and the entire country started changing shoes again for the second time in 30 years. Good old 1991 was back. People started changing. Well, it all originated in the very top and started getting down to the bottom slowly. Okay, people started changing in the country. Well, the country started changing. People started changing, following the country. Well, everything changed. The changes were slow at first, but then everything quickly changed on February 24th, 2022. This event of cosmic scale happened. Okay, this tragedy of cosmic scale, and the country changed its shoes just like that. And I mean, people on top, propagandists, within matter of days. Okay, and regular people, lots of regular people started changing their shoes as well, following the money trail, so to speak. Because you can't really live in Russia now and not support what the government says. You risk if you work for yourself, but you risk your freedom. Okay, but still, you can, if you keep your mouth shut, if you hide, if you are not in public view, you can get by. But if you get paid by the government, if you're a teacher, if you're a judge, if you're a policeman, and soldier, a doctor, a kindergarten teacher, then you cannot keep silent. They come to you, they make you sign papers, they make you donate money, they make you speak up vocally about, supporting this madness. And people do that. People do that just to keep on living, keep on making money, keep on just making a living. And they want those propaganda people just to get off their back. All right, I'll sign, you just don't bother me anymore. Lots of people like that. I call them the fake Z people. They did not change their ideals inside. They just painted their color again, painted a different color. But there are some people who changed their ideals, okay? And I call them the real Z people. So, most Russians have changed their shoes again. Like I said, they're the best in the world in changing shoes. The art is never forgotten. Well, country keeps on changing shoes. Shoes are getting changed every single day. But now it gets it's on a level of such. This is like the art of the highest level. I'm gonna give you a few examples how shoes are changed for this, what in Russia is called special military operation, that I call personally a tragedy. Well, Vladimir Putin on the 24th of February officially said that the goals were to denazify Ukraine, demilitarize. And then it became obvious that no Nazis. And demilitarization is really strange. No one understood what it was. And they changed shoes. They said the goal is different now. The goal is to protect people of Donbass. But then they changed shoes on the go, on the fly. Again, they're saying the goal is different. The goal is to expand Russia and to grab land of Ukraine. And they did. We will never leave the newly received territories. We'll never leave them behind. Russia is always there. Well, they left in about 5 weeks. And they're changing the shoes again. They're saying, well, you know what? The Kherson? Who needed Kherson? I mean, it's not a strategical point. We'll leave it to Ukrainians. We raised it, we're just then leave it to Ukrainians. They're gonna suffer just by having it. It's not important, okay? So it was a right decision to leave to save our troops' lives. That is, my friends, is changing shoes of the highest level, like godlike level. My God. Vladimir Putin saying on March 8th that Russian army is not using conscripts in the special military operation. On the March 9th, then following day, the Ministry of Defense contradicts him, saying there are conscripts. That's changing shoes. Again, on March 8th, Vladimir Putin says there will be no mobilization in Russia under any circumstances. But then 6 months later, the shoes are changed on the go. Mobilization is announced. Mobilization is in the process, and everyone is waiting for the second wave to start just about any day now. This, my friends, is how they change shoes. And there's a certain type of people, very few of them, that is the most incredible thing happening. Right now, this last few days, my friends, again, I think I'm the only one who starts seeing it, okay? I have not heard it anywhere else. You listen very carefully. The entire country in the last 10 months has changed shoes. The ones who didn't want to change shoes, they left, just like me. The ones who are staying, they, to a certain extent, have changed shoes, all of them. But that guy, the artist that I was telling you about, oh boy, he's changed shoes big time. Now he's anti-American again, he's pro-Russia, he likes the Soviet values back and so forth, you know what I mean? But the very few people who are in the know, who know what's really going on, they have access to the highest level. They have access to all the information. And guess what? They have started getting the ground ready for changing their shoes again. And I'm talking about the top propagandists. Their tone of voice has changed. They used to be harsh. They used to be very direct. Let's go and get them. Now they started retracting a little bit. They started saying, well, perhaps we should think about it. Perhaps we were wrong somewhere. You know what I am feeling about this? They understood that soon things will change. And they understood that their only salvation, their only way out is to change shoes again. For the third time, okay? They changed shoes in the USSR. They changed shoes in 2022. And now they're about to change. And they will be the first ones. You know what they're going to be saying? My God, We didn't know what was happening in Ukraine. Well, how if we knew, of course we would have been protesting. We would have been so against it. Oh my God! This is type of changing shoes that's gonna happen, and they're gonna be the first ones, and the rest will follow because the rest are masters in this art. Well, the art of changing shoes, my friends, is a disease. It must be ended. I hope and pray and do everything I can that this is about to end. I try to, I do what I can to end it. I contribute, let's put it this way. The responsible ones for crimes that are committed right now must be prosecuted. They must be put to trial publicly and they must be prosecuted publicly. And the rest must be lustrated and ostracized. Their names must be written everywhere. Russians gotta understand that we can't continue on changing shoes time and time again, because changing shoes is most likely the biggest disease our country has. It's like a virus. It needs to be stopped. It needs to be eradicated.